Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of Pluribus episode 6. Now we jump in right from the wild cliffhanger last week with Carol and what she's seeing in the bags in the warehouse. We actually get to see it revealed through a Blair Witch style sequence where it's filmed through her handheld camera, which I thought was really clever, and it adds to the horror of it, and the reveal that it is body parts. She is shown first to show a human head that is shrink wrapped, but this will be more explained later by John Cena, which we're going to get to. But she's about to send out a video with all this information and what she found, but she stops herself and decides she is going to go to Vegas to see Kumba. But we get some nice dark humor here where when she leaves to go to Vegas, she goes back inside because she realizes she must vacuum the human remains that are on her carpet. Now, when we cut to Kumba in Vegas, he is role-playing a James Bond situation for himself. He wants all of the Us entity to be in character, to play out his fantasy. He even gets mad when the villain slips up for a second and claps for him. And it's so intricate to the point where he already has ladies he's won over, and then he still has a woman he has to win over by the end to come back with him. And you see after all this, the entity is still happy to clean up his giant mess after it. When we see him back at the hot tub, he even invites the maid to come in, but that's where the fun is over. And the Us entity, you see, gets this worry and it wants to leave because they know Carol is coming. They offer Kumba to leave with them if he wants to, but he says, I can't do that to her. Sooner or later, we'll have to talk. So as much as Kumba is a messed up person and someone who has a lot of flaws, he is still giving Carol more of a chance than anybody in this group. Right now, it's really the only person that she's been able to communicate with. So when Carol pulls in, she sees the Westgate Hotel that he's staying at. The sign says, Welcome, Carol. That is obviously from the entity, and that sets up the importance of that sign that's going to come later on. I love we get to see her go up the elevator with a couch. I did not know this was a thing, so I will be sure to book a trip one day to the Westgate Hotel or any hotel that has a couch and elevator. I need to experience that. Now, when she talks to Kumba, he reveals he has seen her videos, which is just shocking, right? Because no one's responded to her videos. He goes, they were very well done, very dramatic, he points out. And now she's about to hype up the video she's brought to show him, but he already knows the information. He knows that the entity is eating people. And he's like, yeah, it's troubling. So this is where he plays the John Cena video. It explains that they are trying to prevent starvation for the Us entity. There's 7 billion people on the planet under the glue. They can't pluck an apple from a tree, but they'll eat it if it falls from the tree. This sets up the great payoff line later where Carol says, I think they should just pick an effing apple, which I thought was perfect. So the reason they drink this drink that's through the meat grinder with the human remains is because it is preventing them from starving. They use 8 to 12% of what they call HDP, which is human-derived protein. So you see how more and more sinister the show is getting, which I really like. It's going this direction now. The Us entity says they are not too keen on this themselves, but they have little choice. And I love the video still ends with John Cena saying, Carol, if you have any questions, you can leave us a voicemail, but we still need our space. Now, Kumba actually found out this information from the real John Cena, who is still under the Us entity, a week ago. And it's revealed to Carol that the other 11 already know about it. So this is that feeling of being left out of the group. She's not in the group chat. But the real case is here, they have Zoom meetings twice a week. She's not involved with those Zoom meetings. These are important meetings. But again, it's mentioned out of the survivors, the only one who's not also included is Manus, the key to all of this. But Kumba catches her up on some important information, one being that most of the world's population will starve to death within the next 10 years, even with the HDP. So it puts a clock even on the pressure, and this explains why there's a pressure for the Us entity to get things figured out quickly and take over the human race and figure out how to take over the survivors. But Kumba shares in their meetings, they're trying to figure out ways to preserve them and help them. They suggested robotic farming so they wouldn't have to do these things that are against their morals, but them would have to create the robots so they don't agree to it because they would be a part of that by creating the robots. And they also took a vote whether to include Carol. And this is definitely where it hurt her feelings, where he's like, well, it wasn't unanimous, but they think she'd be more disruptive than serving good. And informs her that the non-English speakers were not happy about not getting invited to Spain, which I thought was pretty funny. So in the moment where she goes to cry in the bathroom, she still is human after all. There's a great humor layered here with the big selfie picture of Kumba lit up in his own bathroom, just showing the ego of this guy. And you see so many pictures of him in his own suite. What was really interesting, though, is this cuts to Kumba on the phone with the them entity saying, but she is so lonely. And then him saying, yes, I know. And he says, miss you too, my love. So it also makes you wonder, like, how attached is he to this M entity already, saying miss you too, my loves, plural. And also that side relationship he's already having, not including Carol with the entity, talking about her behind her back. And maybe he was trying to convince them to be more communicative with her again. But it is very strange. This whole episode is fishy with Kumba and the they entity. Now he tucks her in after she passes out, makes her breakfast. I like how he watches her, how she makes a sandwich version basically of the breakfast he made, and he actually thinks it really tastes good, so he's learning from Carol there. Now she says to him she will get her own suite, and they will talk some more later. He has a horrified reaction on his face to this. She looks up to see that, and then she says, I'm just messing with you. I think Carol definitely just said this to test the waters with him and see what his reaction would be to that, and she got her answer. So when he's walking her out, Kumba's like, check in now and then with me. And he's like, maybe you'll have idea to save these people from starvation. That's when she has the line of the season to me so far with, I don't know, maybe tell them to pick an effing apple. But this is where she pleads with him to help her find a way to reverse all this. She says, do you think seriously that the world is a better place just because it's peaceful? So this is interesting to think about too. And like, if you always had a vision of utopia, like what's the perfect world? Like even this version, you see how empty and cold it is. And also showing you in a theme that you need conflict, you need drama. This is all kind of like part of the natural way of life and why it is essential. Now, Kumba reveals to her they cannot turn us, not without our consent. This is huge information. He says the only way to make the virus work is to tailor it to their specific stem cells. But for them to get those stem cells, they have to do an invasive procedure, which they have to give their consent for. And he also shares they aren't pleased about it, which is also sinister. Kumba says he did not give his consent when they asked for it. Now, Carol runs at this information, first wants to verify to see that Kumba's not making this up. She gets her answer from the they entity on the sign outside that it is confirmed and true, and then does not give her consent to it, and they confirm that they got that from her. I think this is setting up some crazy scene at the end of the season where one of the survivors is going to try to put Carol in a pressure point situation to give the consent to do the procedure. I think that's going to be some crazy thing that happens here. They're clearly setting up Carol and Manus in this side here against the other survivors, maybe with Kumba somewhere just in the middle, and then that other side we're going to get to know more for sure too, the people we don't know as well. Now, I love Kumba has a sports car for every day of the week. I don't blame him. That seems amazing. Now, Kumba tells Carol the world is doing the best they can. Zosha misses you. This definitely alludes to the phone call he just had with the they and wants to kind of make some kind of peace between Carol and the they. He says they're just looking for a change of heart. So they do want Carol to kind of turn her ways a bit. And she's like, F them. And I really believe that Carol is seen as a threat by the they entity, and that's the real core reason why they're giving space. So everything going on with Carol in this episode and Kumba I thought was great. I think this I was waiting for. The plot's going forward the whole time. There's good pacing to it. Nothing's drawn out. And it's developing the characters, and we're learning more about the characters more in each scene. So really, really impressed. And that continues here when we get the scenes with Manus. Now we go back 3 days to him, and we're with him in his egg timer, and he's run out officially of radio frequencies to test. But we learn that he had one he left a question mark on. And he goes to it and has this repeating sound. I have no idea what it is. Love to hear theories on that. But that's going to be so important, whatever that is, if that's the key to maybe the sound of the hub of the they entity. Something going on there. And it's important that he keeps a radio with him. We'll see later on. Now, he looks outside. His chaperone, which I predicted, which was right, is his mom, leaves the videotape Carol had sent out 3 days ago. Now, when she's giving him all this information, it's played with inspirational music under it. So it's showing you the different reaction he's having to all this than the other survivors where they deny it. They're not on her side, but he's looking at someone who's like-minded as him, and it's inspiring him. She's telling him there's a way to undo the situation. She tells him they can't lie. And he's so inspired by her, he puts his address in his book. So he's definitely going to Carol's address at the end of this episode. And I love the quote playing over him while he's leaving from Carol, saying, and when the day comes that you have peace and love forced upon you, you might just realize you treasure your individuality. I've pointed out this line before and how important it is, and it really is like the core of the show, I believe. And it's showing you the mindset that's in Carol, that is in Manus, that they share at the end of the day, is that, and that treasuring of individuality and the message of this show. And I know Vince Gilligan has said in interviews he didn't think of AI when he wrote this. He wrote a lot of the ideas for the show years ago, but it so fits into that because it's thinking of that AI mindset where you're putting something into a system and it's just generating stuff without individual thought. It's just from other people's ideas. So it's really hitting at that. So I think it's somehow so timely too. Now he's going out to his home. He finally eats a real meal at his home. He gets a gun. He gets his car. And then you see how they present the mom chaperone to him where it's in the shadows. It is a sinister effect. And you're seeing right there the offering of peace and love to him. We're happy to see you, she says. You must be sad and hungry and confused. She calls him his son. He says, don't call me your son. You're not my mother. My mom's a B word. So what a great line to end the episode on. And you see how much Manus's, like I even said, is a heightened version even of Carol. So it excites you to see someone in that like-mindedness of Carol that they can team up. I'm really excited to see them get together on screen. And it really solidified for me this episode in particular, especially how they really showed the mom in that sinister light to not trust this they entity at all. This is the antagonist of the show. So to me, this was the best episode by far of the series. I've been waiting for something that has a better pacing like this, where we're learning about every character more. Every scene is moving the plot forward, and we don't have a 10-minute sequence of someone just getting on a plane. So really like this. I'm going to give this episode a 9, and I hope it just picks up and keeps this momentum for the rest of the way. We're basically at the halfway point here, so I'm excited to see where this goes. It got me way more invested in the show. I want to hear all you guys' theories about it. Let me know your thoughts of this episode and what you think might come next. Please check out my interview with Seehorn. It was a really fun time. It's linked below. And please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Instagram. I do my movie reviews there and do giveaways, and I could really use the support there. It helps in so many ways you have no idea. And I'll see you next time.